For several reasons, I wasn't a fan of my sophomore year math class. But the most irritating part of that experience was not the test. It was not the homework. It was the number of times that I was given a 0 on an assignment, even though I had the answer right. That happened more than once. And every single time it made me want to scream. Now, you might be thinking, Smith, there is no way, if the teacher marked the answer wrong, there is no way that you got it right. I did get it right. I know I got it right because I was fortunate enough that year to have one of those textbooks with the answer key in the back. I was Mr. Right Answer that year. You say, well, then what happened? Why didn't you get full credit? Here was the problem. Evidently, the teacher wanted us to show our work, and what my work revealed is that I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Now, I don't remember a single math formula for that year, but I did learn one very important lesson that has always stuck with me, and that is simply this. You can be right, but at the same time be wrong. That is the truth that Paul is impressing upon the church at Corinth. They had so many things right. They had faith in Jesus. They knew their scriptures. They came together to worship the Lord. They exercised their spiritual gifts. They gave to other people, but at the end of the day, they were failing. And so Paul interrupts a conversation about spiritual gifts in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 just to remind them, listen, you can check all of the right boxes, but if you don't have love, you fail. In absence of love, it doesn't just weaken what we do, but it just takes away all the good that is there. That's what we've been talking about, because what happened in the church in Corinth can easily happen to us. We can become so focused on our image, on our success, on even doing good spiritual things that we forget what matters most, and that's love. So for this entire summer, we have spent time really exploring not romantic love, not friendship love, not even family love, but agape love. That self-giving, action-oriented work of love that works for the good of others without expecting anything in return. And I've had a lot of fun talking about this, but I'm just going to be honest with you, it is hard to live out. Anybody else feel that way? Anybody struggle with that? In fact, it's absolutely impossible to do this by our own strength. It requires the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God, to empower us to love others the way Jesus has loved us. And now we come to the very last description that Paul gives of agape love and how fitting it is. He says this in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 7, love always perseveres. Or as it's put in other translations, love endures all things. Now, that's not the air that we breathe in this culture. We live in a day and age in which it is far more common to cancel people, to ghost people, to unfriend people, to church hop. It's not uncommon to hear spouses make the decision to bounce out of a marriage when their expectations are not met, when romance fades, when sickness enters into the picture. One time the motto used to be, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Today the motto seems to be, when the going gets tough, how quickly can I get going? But agape love, that love, it refuses to behave that way. In fact, the word the Apostle Paul uses for endures, it's actually a military word. It means that you are going to hold your ground, no matter how intense the battle is, no matter what it might cost you. You're going to stay in the fight. You're actually determined to stay in the fight, regardless of how great the cost may be to you personally. And that's exactly what Jesus Christ has done for us. Every single fiery arrow was launched his direction. The slander, betrayal, mockery, torture, even execution. Jesus could have said, I quit at any particular moment. Not even the cross was strong enough to hold him there if he would have decided enough is enough. But he had more than enough agape love for his Father and also for us that he stayed. I like these words of Jesus in John chapter 10 and verse 14 and 15, and then verse 18. It says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. Verse 18, no one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. That's Jesus. Nobody has the power to take my life, but because I love you, because I love my Father, I'm going to give up my life. I'm going to always persevere. That's endurance. That's love refusing to quit. And as disciples, as students, as imitators of Jesus, this is the way that we are called to live. And it is not easy. I was reminded of that a couple of weeks ago. I was sitting in our men's group on a Wednesday night, and I initiated the conversation as we sat around that bonfire, and I just looked at those men, and I said, do any of you remember what the sermon was about on Sunday? Silence, crickets, not a word. Finally, one of the guys speaks up, and he says, agape? Yes, agape. But what about it? And then these guys just start guessing. Love's patient. Love is forgiving. Love protects. Those yahoos would still be guessing if I did not cut them off and give them the right answer. And in that particular moment, I thought to myself, I need to find some better friends. I really, really do. But I'm going to keep going back. And the reason I'm going to keep going back is because love does not wave the white flag. And so I'm there whether they want me or not. Scott Pence, right? Taking notes this morning, buddy? Good. I'm giving these guys grief, but here's the serious truth. Love keeps going even when it's hard. Love keeps going even when you're mistreated. Love keeps going even when you're rejected. Love keeps going even when you're let down. Love never pulls up short because Jesus' love never pulled up short on us. We read these words in John chapter 13 and verse 1. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Those disciples gave him plenty of reasons to give up on them, but Jesus just did not give up on them. He persevered in love. He loved them to his very last breath. That's what it looks like. Now, as I've said throughout this series, there are times in which relationships have to change. And when relationships change the way we express our love for those individuals, it may look different, but our commitment to love, it remains the same. I can't help but think about that father in Luke chapter 15 in which his boy comes to him and says, hey, listen, Dad, I'd really like my share of the inheritance right now. In essence, in that culture saying, listen, Dad, you're as good as dead to me, so go ahead and give me the money so I can do with it what I want. And then he makes the decision to leave home, and he travels off and he lives a lifestyle that's far from the way that he was raised. Now, did that father have to love that son in a different way at that point? Yes, he did. The son had completely cut off relationship with him, but the father never stopped loving his boy. Jesus doesn't say it in the parable, but I imagine if you would expand on it, you'd find him saying that father continued to pray and plead with God for that boy to come home. We do know this, that father waited and he watched for that boy to come home. And so when the son finally made a turn back towards home, that father was there to welcome him long before he ever made it to the front step. I love these words in Luke chapter 15, verse 20. But while he was still a long way off from home, His father saw him, was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. And then, as you will recall, that father threw a big-time welcome home party. There were gifts, there was music, there was dancing, and there was food. And it was just this huge celebration. And I never tire of reading that story. As a son and as a father, it strikes me in the deepest places of my being. But I know the reason that that story means so much to me is because I recognize that it's my story. It's your story. It's all of our stories. By our own choice, at some particular time, we made the decision to be estranged from our Father. Some of us did it in outright rebellion. Others of us, we just have this emotional distance from God. For some of us, it was a period of a few days or a few weeks. For others of us, it's been for many, many years. And yet, the moment that we made the decision to turn back towards the Father, He was there, arms wide open, ready to embrace us, ready to welcome us home, ready to celebrate with us, and ready to give us His very, very best. And what does He ask of us in return? He asks us to embrace that love, but also to extend that love to others. And this is where the eldest brother absolutely failed. We read these words, picking up the story in Luke chapter 15, verse 25 through 28. Meanwhile, the older brother was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing, so he called one of his servants and asked him what was going on. Your brother's come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in, so his father went out and pleaded with him. There's so much we could unpack here, but here's the simple point for today, is that whatever love that the older brother had for his younger brother, it at some point it petered out. It did not persevere. It's kind of easy to understand why, right? I mean, how do you keep loving a sibling who is so selfish, who's so irresponsible, who has caused so much pain to so many people in the family? How do you keep that up? And so I understand. But what the parable teaches us is this, that older son's refusal to love his younger brother, it shattered the father's heart in the same way as the younger son's rebellion. And every time our love for one another runs dry, it breaks the heart of the Father. And so how do you keep loving when everything in you wants to quit? How do you keep loving when people hurt you and disappoint you and frustrate you and annoy you, sometimes over and over again? That's the question you have to wrestle with if you truly want a heart that reflects the heart of God. So I want to share with you just a few practical suggestions this morning. One is simply this. It is to remember that love always works. Or as the Apostle Paul puts it in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 8, love never fails. Some things like spiritual gifts are eventually going to go by the wayside, but love endures forever. Choosing love is never a losing decision. It just isn't. There is an impact that is made by your choice to love, whether you recognize it or not, and sometimes you won't see it for a long, long time. And I hope that truth will guide you in your everyday moments. I hope it will guide you as you think, I just can't be patient with this child any longer. But you love them, and so you are. And I hope you'll remember it when you have that coworker that's driving you nuts and you think, I just can't forgive this person one more time. But you love them with agape love, and so you do one more time. And in those moments when you're hesitant to lead with trust, you decide, I'm going to go ahead and risk it, even though it may cost me something, because you agape love them. And so you take that chance. And it matters, and you don't always see how much it matters. But what Paul reminds us of at the end of 1 Corinthians chapter 13 is this, is that right now our spiritual vision is limited. You can't see it all, you don't understand it all, but one day you will. One day you will be with the Father and you will begin to see all the different ways that your spiritual decisions made a difference in this world. He writes this in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 12, "For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, then we shall see face to face. Now in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known." There is a day coming when your eyes are going to be wide open and you're going to see what a difference you've made. And so keep loving, persevere, keep going, don't quit, because things are happening in the unseen realm, in the spiritual realm you don't recognize, you don't see, but it is amazing because love works. It always works. Now, the second practical thing that I hope you'll keep in mind is simply this: remember who is truly at work. The person who has exhausted your love is not the one truly responsible. Yes, they are accountable for every poor choice, for every wrong word spoken. They are accountable. But behind those bad actions, behind those failures, there is a spiritual battle that's taking place. Paul writes this in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." One of the best ways to persevere in love with those who are exhausting your love is to try to understand them. To try to put yourself in their situation, to try to see the world from their perspective. And if you can't imagine it, you need to seek to understand more of their story. Stephen Covey, in his classic book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he gives a perfect illustration of this. Many of you probably remember the story. He's sitting on a quiet subway in New York, on that commute, when a young father and kids enter into that subway, and immediately those kids start yelling and screaming and disturbing all the passengers. And Covey says he's irritated to the point that he walks over to the father and says, "Listen, your kids are disturbing everyone on this train. Perhaps there's something more you could do to control them." And that father very quietly says, "You know, you're right." He says, "I probably should think about how to get a handle on this." But he said, "We just came from the hospital, and their mother died an hour ago. And I don't know what to think about it. And I guess they don't know how to handle it either." And Covey says in that moment, everything changed. It's when you understand the story, it changes how you love people. We understand what's happened in their life. It changes how you love people. Satan loves to take hurt and pain. He loves to take past trauma. He likes to take family dysfunctional systems. He loves to take sinful tendencies and to use all those things to create chaos and division and to exhaust our love. And yes, you have every right to say, "I've had enough." And you have every right to say, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. But the moment that your hurt hardens your heart, or the moment you decide, "I'm going to fight fire with fire," Satan wins. That's not agape love. That's not the way that we're called to behave. So instead, if you're going to fight this battle with the evil one, your best possibility of winning this war is to do the exact opposite of Satan, and that is to love people like Jesus loves people, even if it might cost you everything. You see, in this particular battle, to win this battle, we don't strike back, we love forward. That's the way that we go about this. Now, third, remember God's working on you. The writer of Hebrews reminds us that God will allow difficult situations. He will allow difficult people to enter into our lives at times, but there's a purpose behind it. That hardship is not wasted. That hardship is a tool in the hand of God as he shapes us into the likeness of Jesus Christ. Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 7 and verse 10 says this: endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children, for what children are not disciplined by their father? Verse 10, God disciplines us for our good in order that we may share in his holiness. So one of the best ways to keep loving when you'd much rather quit is to stop and ask, what is God trying to teach me in this particular moment? Or how is God trying to change me, form me into the image of Jesus Christ? Those are the questions that we need to be asking. When you ask those type of questions, it changes or transforms frustration into formation. You start to become more like the one that you follow, and it keeps you moving forward in the way of love. So maybe it's that coworker who constantly takes credit for your work, and everything in you wants to try to sabotage their efforts or just completely to avoid them. Maybe, just maybe, God is using that particular relationship to grow your patience, stretch your patience, and also grow your humility. Maybe it's somebody right here in this church family. They've let you down. They've hurt you and discouraged you. They've disappointed you. And right now you're thinking maybe, just maybe, it's time that we find a new church to go to. Maybe. But maybe God's using that particular situation to help you know how to stick instead of walk away. Yes, there are times that relationships have to change. But my encouragement to you this morning is don't quit too soon. Don't walk so quickly that you miss the opportunity to understand what God is teaching you and what he's forming in you and what he's trying to grow in you so that you become the person that Jesus wants you to be. Now, lastly, please remember, love works for God's glory. If you spent much time in Scripture at all, you know that God is not shy about asking difficult things of his people. Boy, one of those tough asks, if not the toughest in my opinion, is what he asked of the prophet Hosea. You remember the story? He says to Hosea, Hosea, I want you to marry this particular promiscuous woman, and I want you to have children with her. He didn't really ask. He told Hosea, this is what you're going to do. And so Hosea did. And sure enough, that particular woman, Gomer, after a period of time, we don't know how long, but she left her husband and she went back to her old ways. And then God came back to Hosea and said, Hosea, I want you to go find her. I want you to bring her back. And I want you to keep loving her. That's a hard ask. Now, why would God ask that of Hosea? Hosea chapter 3, verse 1. It says this, the Lord said to me, go show your love to your wife again, though she is loved by another man and is an adulteress. Love her as the Lord loves the Israelites, though they turn to other gods and love the sacred raisin cakes. Through Hosea's relentless love of Gomer, God gave Israel a living picture of his relentless love for them. And the same thing happens today. It is the husband who walks into the memory care unit and sits by his spouse, even though he knows she no longer knows my name. It's the parent who wears out the carpet on their knees praying, God, please rescue my child from addiction, even though time and again there's healing and relapse and healing and relapse and healing and relapse. It is the friend who sends the text to the friend who's battling depression, knowing most likely I'm not going to hear back from this friend, but they keep sending the text time and again. It's the church member who comes into this place and continues to serve time and time again, even though most people won't recognize their contribution. And each one of those acts of love is a reflection of God's love for us. It's a modern day parable that teaches us about how God treats us and cares for us. And it is that unwavering, enduring, tenacious, will not quit kind of love that puts God's heart on display. It draws others to him and it brings God glory. And so as we wrap up this particular sermon, but also this entire series, I want to leave you with this question. Who have you quit on? Who have you quit on? I'm not saying that you need to engage that person in the exact same way. I'm simply asking you to think about how can you express love to that person in a way that's good for them, it's good for you, and it points them towards God. Listen, it may be something small. It may be simply sending a text message, offering to forgive the person. It may be choosing on your own just to pray for that person daily. It may be something big. It may be making the decision that you're going to invite that person to sit down and have dinner. It may be that you're going to invite that spouse back into your bedroom. But what is that step that needs to take place so that you agape them well? Whatever it looks like, please remember this. Love never quits. It never gives up. Love endures all things because it reflects the heart of God. So this week as we leave this place, let's be asking God, where do you need your love to show up, to flow through us? And trust him that he'll give you the strength to keep going no matter what the cost might be this week. And when you love the way Jesus has loved you, you glorify God, you bless others, you will transform this world in one persevering act of love after another. And so may God bless you as you walk in the way of Jesus.